The moment I stepped through the doors of Beaumont Manor holding baby Noah against my shoulder, Vivian Beaumont looked at me like I was a problem she hadn't planned for. Her eyes moved slowly, from my worn coat to my flat shoes to the baby nestled quietly in my arms. She didn't smile, she didn't say hello. She paused, tilted her head just slightly, and said the words that told me everything I needed to know. "So this is Lucas's girlfriend. Not welcome to our home, not nice to finally meet you." Just that. In that single sentence, I felt myself being measured, weighed, and dismissed. What Vivian Beaumont didn't know, what no one standing in that elegant foyer knew, was that the broke single mother she'd already decided wasn't good enough, actually earned 5 figures a month, was months away from becoming a doctor, and had walked into that mansion with a purpose. Every polite smile, every backhanded comment, every carefully disguised insult that night was part of a test designed to answer one question. Could Lucas love me when he believed I had nothing? And more importantly, would his family show me who they truly were before I showed them who I really was? As I followed Lucas deeper into the mansion, past the marble floors and priceless artwork, one truth settled heavily in my chest. That night at Beaumont Manor wasn't just about meeting his family. It was the beginning of a reckoning they never saw coming. I kept my smile in place as Lucas gently guided me forward, his hand warm at the small of my back. Baby Noah shifted against my shoulder, letting out a soft sound that echoed just a little too loudly in the vast foyer. Vivian Beaumont turned away without another word. "Come in," she said, already walking toward the sitting room. "Mind the floors." I glanced down instinctively as if my shoes alone might damage something priceless. The house was enormous in a way that felt intentional. Every detail announced wealth without saying it out loud. High ceilings, polished stone, paintings that looked like they belonged behind museum glass instead of family walls. I had been in places like this before. I just usually wasn't being evaluated as part of the decor. Lucas leaned down toward me. "She's particular," he whispered, apologetic. "I noticed," I replied softly. A man rose from a leather armchair near the window as we entered the sitting room. Tall, reserved, with eyes that missed nothing. "Natalie, this is my father," Lucas said. "Dad, this is Natalie, and Noah." Charles Beaumont shook my hand. His grip was firm, his nod polite. "Nice to meet you." It sounded sincere, brief but sincere. Vivian, meanwhile, was already pouring herself a drink. A woman about my age sat perched on the arm of a sofa, phone in hand, scrolling with practiced indifference. She looked up just long enough to take me in. "Oh," she said, "you brought the baby." Lucas sighed. "Camille—" "What?" she shrugged. "I just thought maybe she'd get a sitter." My arms tightened around Noah without me realizing it. "He's fine," I said evenly. "I'm sure he is," Camille replied, her smile thin. "Just unexpected." Vivian turned, glass in hand. "Dinner will be ready shortly," she said. "You can set the baby carrier over there." She gestured toward a side table that looked more decorative than functional. "He's staying with me," I said politely. Something flickered in her eyes. Disapproval, quickly masked. "If you insist." We moved toward the dining room moments later. The table was long, formally set, clearly meant for more people than were present. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, untouched. Vivian indicated seats without asking. Lucas was placed beside his father, Camille across from them. I was directed to the far end, away from Lucas, away from the center of conversation. I sat without comment, adjusting Noah as carefully as I could. He stared up at the lights, fascinated, completely unaware that his existence seemed to complicate everything. Vivian took her seat and folded her napkin. "So, Natalie," she said, finally turning her full attention on me, "tell us about yourself." I'd rehearsed this version of my life too many times to count. "I work part-time at a dental office," I said. "Administrative work, mostly." "Part-time," she repeated, her tone neutral but sharp. "And the baby?" "Noah's father isn't involved," I said calmly. "He helps financially when he can." Camille raised an eyebrow. "That must be stressful." "It can be," I replied. Vivian nodded slowly. "Lucas has always valued stability." Lucas straightened. "Mom, I'm just saying," she continued, "structure matters, especially when children are involved." I felt the weight of every unspoken conclusion pressing down on me. Camille glanced at her phone again. "I tried looking you up earlier," she said casually. "You're not online at all." "I prefer it that way," I said. "That's unusual," she replied. "Most people like to be seen. Not this version of me." Noah shifted, letting out a small sound. I bounced him gently, instinctively soothing. "Please be careful," Vivian said. "That tablecloth is imported." "I will," I said softly. Lucas stood abruptly. "I'll take Noah for a minute." Vivian looked startled. "You don't need to." "I want to," he replied firmly. Noah settled against Lucas's shoulder easily, his small hand gripping Lucas's collar. For a moment, everything went quiet. Vivian watched them closely. "So," she said, turning back to me, "what are your plans, Natalie?" "To work," I answered. "To raise my son, to build something stable." "With Lucas?" Camille asked. "If that's what he wants," I said. Vivian smiled faintly. "Love is sweet, but love doesn't always last." Lucas's voice hardened. "Enough!" Charles cleared his throat. "Dinner is getting cold?" Plates were passed. I barely touched mine. As conversation drifted elsewhere, I felt it clearly now. This wasn't curiosity. It was assessment. Vivian Beaumont wasn't getting to know me. She was deciding whether I was a mistake her family could afford to correct. And sitting there, at the far end of that table, pretending to be smaller than I truly was, I realized something important. This night wasn't just a test of love. It was a warning, and I wasn't sure yet who it was meant for. Dessert arrived as if on cue, the tension at the table never quite lifting. A thin slice of cake was placed in front of me on fine china, the kind that looked more ceremonial than edible. I didn't touch it. Vivian noticed immediately. "You're not hungry?" she asked. "I ate earlier," I replied. "Of course," she said, as if that explained everything. Lucas glanced toward me, concern flickering across his face. I gave him a small nod, silently asking him not to intervene. Not yet. Camille leaned back in her chair. "So, Natalie," she said lightly, "how long have you and my brother been together?" 8 months, I answered. 8 months, she repeated. "And you already have a baby together?" "No," I said calmly. "Noah is from before." Camille tilted her head. "That's a lot to bring into a relationship." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Camille." "What?" she said. "I'm being honest." Vivian set her fork down. "Honesty is important," she said, "especially when families are involved." I met her gaze. "I agree." For a moment, she looked almost surprised. Charles remained silent, observing, his eyes moving between faces, expressions carefully neutral. Noah stirred in Lucas's arms, his small fingers curling into the fabric of Lucas's shirt. Lucas smiled down at him without thinking, gently rocking him back to sleep. Vivian noticed. Her lips pressed together. "Children form attachments quickly," she said coolly. "It doesn't always mean anything lasting." Something sharp twisted in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "He's a baby. He responds to kindness." "And kindness," she replied, "can be misunderstood." Lucas stood suddenly. "Mom, that's enough!" Vivian looked up at him. "I'm only trying to be realistic." "I didn't ask for realism," he said. "I asked for respect." Silence fell over the table. Charles cleared his throat again. "Perhaps we should move to the sitting room." Vivian rose smoothly, regaining control of the moment. "Yes, coffee." The sitting room was quieter, more intimate, but no less intimidating. Family portraits lined the walls, generations of Beaumonts smiling confidently into the camera, as if permanence itself were hereditary. I sat where indicated, Noah asleep against my chest now, his warmth grounding me. Vivian handed me a cup of coffee. "It's strong," she said. "You may not be used to it." "Thank you," I replied. Camille crossed her legs. "So what do you do all day, Natalie? With the baby, I mean." "I manage," I said. Vivian nodded. "Lucas works very hard, long hours. His life is structured." "I know," I replied. "And children," Vivian added gently, "require flexibility, sacrifice." Lucas's voice was sharp. "What are you implying?" "I'm saying love doesn't solve everything," she replied. "Some situations are temporary by nature." The word landed heavily. "Temporary?" Noah shifted slightly, his face relaxing as he slept. I adjusted him instinctively. Vivian watched me, her gaze calculating. Lucas took a step closer to me. "Natalie isn't temporary." Vivian smiled thinly. We'll see. A few minutes later, Lucas excused himself to take a call. As soon as he stepped away, Vivian's demeanor changed. She leaned forward slightly. You seem like a capable young woman, she said quietly. But you must understand how this looks. How what looks? I asked. A man with options, she said, and a woman with limitations. Camille watched openly now, interested. I'm not asking Lucas to rescue me, I said evenly. Vivian nodded. You don't have to. The implication hung in the air. Lucas has responsibilities, she continued, a future that requires clarity. And I don't fit into that picture, I said. Vivian didn't deny it. I'm saying you complicate it. Before I could respond, Noah stirred again, letting out a soft sound. I focused on him, breathing through the moment. Lucas returned, sensing the shift immediately. Everything okay? Perfect, Vivian said smoothly. Soon after, Lucas suggested we leave. Vivian didn't protest. At the door, she kissed his cheek. We'll talk, she said. Then she looked at me. Drive safely. The words were polite. The message was not. The drive home was quiet. I'm sorry, Lucas said finally. That shouldn't have happened. She meant every word, I replied, and that's what matters. She'll come around, he said. I didn't answer. As Beaumont Manor disappeared behind us, I stared out the window, my reflection faint in the glass. Vivian Beaumont thought she was protecting her family. What she didn't realize was that the test she thought she was giving me was one she had already failed. And we were only at the beginning. The drive back from Beaumont Manor felt longer than it should have. Streetlights slid past the windows in steady intervals, each one briefly illuminating Lucas's profile before fading again. Noah slept in his car seat, one tiny fist curled against his cheek, completely untouched by the tension that still clung to the air. I should have said more, Lucas finally admitted. I let her push too far. You did speak up, I said, just not loudly enough for her to hear it. He exhaled slowly. She's used to being listened to. I noticed. He glanced at me. Did she say something to you when I stepped away? I thought about the word temporary, the calm certainty behind it. She made her position clear, I replied. That's all. Lucas's jaw tightened. I won't let her decide our future. I wanted to believe that. I did believe that he meant it. But meaning something and standing your ground weren't the same thing. At my apartment, Lucas carried Noah inside without being asked, moving through the space like it was already familiar. He laid him gently in the crib and stood there for a moment longer than necessary, watching him sleep. He trusts you, Lucas said quietly. So do I replied. He turned to me. That night wasn't fair to you. It wasn't about fairness, I said. It was about control. He nodded. She's always been like that. Does she usually win? Lucas didn't answer right away. That told me everything. After he left, the apartment felt quieter than usual. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at a message I'd ignored earlier from work. Urgent case, we need you tonight. Only you can finish it. It was the kind of opportunity people waited years for. I typed back slowly. I can't tonight. Family commitment. The reply came almost instantly. Are you sure? This is a major career moment. I looked toward Noah's room. I'm sure. I set the phone down, my chest tight. I wasn't sure why that decision felt heavier than the others, but it did. The next few days passed cautiously. Lucas checked in constantly. Morning texts, evening calls, apologies layered over concern. Vivian didn't reach out. The silence felt deliberate. On the fourth day, Lucas showed up with groceries and a small stuffed whale for Noah. I'm trying to prove I can multitask, he joked. You're doing fine, I said. He hesitated. I talked to my dad. And? He thinks my mom crossed a line. Did he say that to her? Lucas smiled faintly. No. Progress, then. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I made a decision. I needed to know. I need to tell you something, I said carefully. Lucas straightened immediately. What's wrong? Noah's father stopped sending money, I said. Completely. I don't know how I'm going to cover rent next month. It wasn't true, but it was necessary. Lucas didn't pause. Move in with me, he said. I blinked. Lucas, I have a second bedroom. You and Noah can have it as long as you need. It's a lot, I said quietly. So is loving someone, he replied. And I do. I searched his face for hesitation. There wasn't any. "What about your mother?" I asked. He let out a short laugh. "She'll have to deal with it." "Let me think," I said. "Take all the time you need," he replied, but my answer won't change. After he left, I sat on the floor beside Noah's crib, my back against the wall, the weight of everything pressing down at once. The test was reaching its end. He had chosen me privately. The real question was whether he would choose me publicly. 2 days later, Lucas called. "My mom wants a family meeting," he said. "Tonight." I already knew the answer before I asked. "Am I invited?" Silence. "No," he said. "She insisted it was family only." I closed my eyes. After we hung up, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. Rose Beaumont. A message followed. "She's planning an ultimatum. Don't worry, I'll be there." My pulse quickened. Vivian was moving. And for the first time since I'd walked into Beaumont Manor pretending to be someone smaller than I was, I realized something important. This wasn't just a test of love anymore. It was a test of truth. And very soon, there would be no more room to hide. The hours before the family meeting dragged by in slow motion. I tried to keep myself busy, folding laundry that didn't need folding, wiping down a counter that was already clean, but my mind kept circling back to Beaumont Manor, to Vivian's calm certainty, to the way she spoke as if outcomes were hers to assign. Noah crawled across the living room rug, babbling happily, stopping every few seconds to bang a plastic block against the floor. I sat nearby, watching him, grounding myself in the simple rhythm of his movement. At exactly 9:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Rose Beaumont. "It's starting." Another message followed almost immediately, this time with a video attached. "You should see this." My hands trembled as I pressed play. The screen filled with the familiar sitting room. The camera angle was steady, discreet. Rose had placed her phone carefully. Vivian stood near the fireplace, posture perfect, hands clasped as if she were about to address a boardroom. Lucas sat on the sofa, shoulders tight. Camille leaned against the window, arms crossed. Charles sat quietly, expression unreadable. "This has gone on long enough," Vivian said. "I've been patient, Lucas, but this situation is becoming embarrassing." Lucas's voice was controlled. "Natalie is not an embarrassment." Vivian smiled thinly. "She's a complication. There's a difference." Camille scoffed. "She has nothing, Lucas. No stability. No future that aligns with ours." "I don't care about alignment," Lucas replied. "I care about her." Vivian's tone softened, turning strategic. "Then let's be practical. If you're attached to the child, fine. We can help. We can provide resources. Structure." My stomach tightened. "But the mother," Vivian continued, "is holding you back." Silence fell. "Are you suggesting?" Lucas began. "I'm suggesting solutions," Vivian interrupted. "The baby can be given a better life, without unnecessary attachments." My breath caught. Lucas stood so abruptly his chair scraped loudly across the floor. "Stop!" Everyone froze. "You're talking about a human being," he said. "A woman I love. A mother who has done nothing but protect her child. And you're asking me to abandon her? We're asking you to choose your future," Vivian snapped. "My future is my choice," Lucas said, "and it includes Natalie." Vivian's eyes hardened. "If you continue down this path, you will lose this family." Lucas didn't hesitate. "Then I'll walk away." The room went utterly still. Charles spoke for the first time. "The decision has been made." Vivian turned to him, stunned. "Charles—" "Enough," he said calmly. "You've said enough." The video ended. I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision before I even realized they were there. My chest felt tight, full, overwhelmed by a rush of relief and disbelief. He chose me. Not in private. Not when it was easy. But when it cost him everything he'd been raised to protect. My phone rang immediately. "Rose." "He meant it," she said gently. "He didn't hesitate." "I saw," I whispered. She paused. "Whatever you've been hiding, Natalie, he's ready for it." After we hung up, I sank onto the couch, Noah crawling into my lap as if he sensed the shift in the air. I held him close, breathing him in, grounding myself again. The test was over, but now came the truth. Before I could call Lucas, my phone buzzed again. "Megan." Her voice was frantic. "My parents are coming," she said. "They found out how much you've been helping with Noah. They're talking about lawyers. They think I abandoned him." I closed my eyes. Everything was converging at once. "We'll talk tomorrow," I said gently. "We'll figure this out." After the call, I sat in the quiet, Noah asleep against my chest, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Lucas deserved honesty. Noah deserved stability, and I was running out of time to keep pretending. The next morning, Lucas called. "Can we meet?" he asked. "At the cafe where we first met." "Yes," I said. I looked around my apartment, the carefully constructed life built on half-truths and good intentions. By the end of the day, it would all be gone. No more disguises, no more tests. Just the truth, and whatever came with it. The cafe was quieter than usual that morning. Sunlight filtered through the front windows, catching dust in the air and turning it almost golden. I arrived early, Noah tucked against my shoulder, my heart beating harder with every step toward the corner table, where Lucas and I had first met. This time there was no pretending, no carefully chosen story, no rehearsed version of myself, just the truth waiting to be spoken. Lucas walked in a few minutes later. He looked exhausted, but there was a steadiness to him I hadn't seen before. When he smiled at Noah, it wasn't tentative. It was certain. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey." We sat. Noah immediately reached for the sugar packets, and Lucas slid them away with a familiar grin. The normalcy of it almost made me forget why we were there. Almost. Lucas took a breath. "My grandmother told me you saw the meeting." "Yes," I said. "She recorded it." He nodded. "I'm glad." "So am I replied. "You chose me." "I never doubted that I would," he said. "I just didn't realize how far my mother was willing to go." Silence settled between us, heavy, expectant. I wrapped my fingers around my coffee cup, grounding myself. "Lucas, there are things I haven't told you." His expression didn't change. "Okay." "I'm not a part-time office worker," I said. "I never was." He blinked once. "All right." "I'm a senior dental prosthetist," I continued. "I've been working at Elite Dental Arts Laboratory for 8 years. When dentists need precision work, they request me by name." He stared at me, processing. "I make more than enough to support myself," I said quietly. "And in a few months, I'll finish dental school." The words hung in the air. "You're a doctor?" he asked slowly. "Almost." Lucas leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because 3 years ago, I was engaged to a man who left me when he found out how successful I was," I said. "He said I made him feel small. I didn't want to live through that again." Understanding flickered across Lucas's face, but it was layered with something else. "So you tested me," he said. "Yes." "How long?" "From the beginning." He was quiet for a long moment. Noah babbled softly between us, blissfully unaware. "That hurts," Lucas said finally. "Not the success, the test." "I know," I whispered. "I'm sorry." "There's more," he said, reading my face. "Yes." I swallowed. "Noah isn't my son." Lucas froze. "He's my friend Megan's baby," I explained. "She wasn't ready to be a mother. I stepped in. I've been helping raise him. So, everything I thought I knew—" He stopped himself, exhaling slowly. "Was any of it real?" "My feelings were real," I said immediately. "Everything I feel for you is real. I just didn't trust myself enough to believe someone could love me without conditions." Lucas looked down at the table, then back at me. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I shook my head. "That you expected me to fail," he said, "from day one." The truth of that landed hard. "I didn't want to," I said. "I was just afraid." He nodded slowly. "I understand why you did it. I don't like it, but I understand it." Relief washed through me so fast it almost hurt. "And now?" he asked. "No more tests," I said. "No more disguises, just honesty." Lucas studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket pocket. My breath caught. He placed a small velvet box on the table. "I was going to wait," he said. "But after last night, I realized something. I don't want a future my mother approves of. I want one I choose." He opened the box. The ring was simple, thoughtful, perfect in its restraint. "Natalie," he said, his voice steady, "I love you. Not the version you showed the world, the real you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision. Yes, I said softly. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger as quiet applause rippled through the cafe. Someone laughed. Someone cheered. I laughed too, through tears. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. And I wasn't waiting for everything to fall apart. As Lucas reached for my hand, I realized something profound. The truth hadn't destroyed us. It had finally set us free. I heard her before I saw her. The sharp click of heels against tile cut through the cafe's gentle noise, followed by a familiar pause in conversation, like the room itself sensed tension approaching. Lucas! His hand tightened around mine. I turned slowly. Vivian Beaumont stood just inside the entrance, impeccably dressed, her expression composed but brittle. She looked from Lucas to me, then down to my hand, to the ring. For a fraction of a second, she said nothing. "What is happening here?" she demanded. Lucas stood, instinctively positioning himself between us. "I just proposed." Vivian's breath caught. "You what?" Natalie said yes, he added calmly. The surrounding tables had gone quiet now. A few people openly stared. Someone smiled. Vivian's gaze snapped to me, sharp and accusing. "After everything I said to you, after that meeting?" "Because of that meeting," Lucas replied. "You showed me exactly who you are." Her jaw tightened. "You're being reckless." "No," he said. "I'm being honest." Vivian turned fully toward me. "You manipulated my son." I stood, my voice steady. I protected myself. "You lied," she snapped. "I learned," I replied. "There's a difference." For the first time since I'd met her, Vivian didn't immediately respond. Her authority faltered, cracking under the weight of public attention. Lucas squeezed my hand. "If you want to be part of our lives, you'll treat Natalie with respect. If not, don't come to the wedding." Vivian stared at him, disbelief giving way to fury. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," Lucas said, "but it will be my choice." We walked out together, the bell above the door chiming softly behind us. Outside, the air felt lighter, free. The fallout came quickly. Vivian called everyone she knew, friends, colleagues, distant relatives. She told them I was a liar, a deceiver, a woman who had tricked her son. But she underestimated one thing: Rose. By the time Vivian's version reached their social circle, Rose's had already arrived first. "She pretended to be poor to make sure my grandson loved her for who she is," Rose told them. "Frankly, I find it romantic." The story spread faster than Vivian could control it. Questions were asked, judgments shifted. Vivian's reputation, carefully curated over decades, took a hit she couldn't manage away. Camille tried her own approach, posting something vague and bitter online about gold diggers with hidden agendas. It didn't land. No one cared. 2 days later, there was a knock at Lucas's apartment door. Charles Beaumont stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable in the way men do when they're about to admit they were wrong. "I owe you an apology," he said to me. "For what?" I asked. "For staying silent," he replied. "I watched Vivian control every narrative in this family. I told myself it was easier not to fight." He met my eyes. "You didn't deserve any of that." "Thank you," I said. He nodded once. "Welcome to the family, the real one." The last unresolved thread was Noah. Megan's parents arrived earlier than expected, lawyers in tow. But something unexpected happened instead of a battle. Megan told the truth. She admitted she wasn't ready, that Noah was happier, calmer, safer with consistency she couldn't provide yet. They decided together. Noah would stay with his grandparents for now. I held him the night before they left, memorizing everything. The weight of him in my arms, the way he grabbed my hair, the soft sound of his breathing as he slept. "You're going to be okay," I whispered. "I promise." He gurgled as if agreeing. After they left, the apartment felt quiet in a new way. Lucas wrapped his arms around me. "We'll build our own family," he said softly. I leaned into him, finally letting myself believe it. The woman who walked into Beaumont Manor pretending to be small didn't exist anymore. I had stopped hiding. And the people who mattered had chosen me, exactly as I am. The quiet after everything settled was almost unsettling. No messages, no dramatic phone calls, no sudden crises demanding my attention. Just space. Lucas noticed it first. "You keep waiting for something to go wrong," he said one evening as we sat on the couch, the city lights glowing faintly through the window. "I don't know how not to," I admitted. My life has been one long sequence of bracing myself. He turned toward me. You don't have to brace anymore. I wanted to believe that. Over the next few weeks, life shifted into something surprisingly normal. We grocery shopped together, argued mildly about where to put furniture, took slow walks with Noah's empty stroller still folded in the corner, a quiet reminder of a chapter that had ended gently, not violently. One morning, I returned to the lab. The familiar hum of equipment greeted me like an old friend, the smell of disinfectant, the focused silence of people who understood precision and patience. Dr. Klein looked up as I entered. "There you are," he said. "We nearly delayed the Hargrove case." "I'm sorry," I replied. "Family situation." He nodded. "Happens. You ready?" "Always." As I worked, shaping materials down to fractions of a millimeter, something inside me finally settled. This was who I was when I wasn't hiding, when I wasn't shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. During my break, my phone buzzed. A message from Rose. "Proud of you, both of you." I smiled. That night, Lucas met me outside the lab, leaning against his car with a paper bag in hand. "I thought we should celebrate," he said. Inside the bag was a slice of cake from the bakery down the street and 2 plastic forks. "You remembered," I said. "I pay attention," he replied. We sat on a bench, sharing the cake, laughing when frosting ended up on his sleeve. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't performative. It was real. "So," he said after a moment, "have you thought about what you want next?" I nodded. "I want my own practice. Small, intentional, quality over volume." He smiled. "That sounds exactly like you." The wedding conversation crept in slowly. No pressure, no spectacle. We agreed on something small, intimate. No audience we felt the need to impress. A ceremony built on choice, not obligation. Vivian didn't reach out. Neither did Camille. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel threatening. It felt peaceful. A week later, Charles invited us to lunch. Just the 3 of us. No speeches, no apologies layered with excuses. He asked about my work, about my plans, about how I envisioned balancing everything. Real questions. At the end of the meal, he said quietly, "My mother taught Vivian that control was the same thing as care. She never learned the difference." "I'm not trying to replace her," I said. He nodded. "Good, no one should." On the drive home, Lucas glanced at me. "You handled that better than I ever could have." "I'm done fighting battles that aren't mine," I replied. That night, I thought about Noah. I missed him in quiet moments. The way he'd grip my finger. The way he'd laugh at nothing. I called Megan. "How is he?" I asked. "He's good," she said. "Happy, safe." Relief washed through me. "He still recognizes your voice," she added softly. I closed my eyes. "Tell him I love him." After the call, Lucas pulled me close. "You did the right thing." "I know," I said. "That doesn't make it easy." "Right things rarely are." As weeks passed, the story spread. Not as gossip, but as truth. Not a scandal. A lesson. People learned who I was, what I did, what I'd chosen. And what surprised me wasn't judgment. It was respect. At work, among friends, even within circles tied loosely to the Beaumont name. The narrative had shifted, not because I defended myself, but because I stopped hiding. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the apartment filled with soft light, Lucas rested his forehead against mine. "You didn't just survive my family," he said. "You changed the rules." I smiled. "Good, because I'm not playing that game anymore." He laughed quietly. "Promise?" "Promise." For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something I had to outsmart. It felt like something I could walk into, open-eyed, unguarded, and entirely my own. Graduation came quietly. No dramatic countdown, no sleepless night before, just a calm certainty that settled into my chest as I zipped up my gown and checked my reflection one last time. For years, I'd imagined this moment with anxiety, waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to question whether I deserved to be here. Nothing happened. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma, and heard my name spoken clearly, without hesitation. Dr. Natalie Harper. The word landed differently than I expected. Not heavy, not overwhelming. Right. Lucas was waiting outside the auditorium, leaning against the railing, holding a bouquet that was slightly too big to be practical. When he saw me, his face broke into a smile that still felt like a small miracle. "Doctor," he said softly. I laughed. "Say it again." "Dr. Harper." That was enough to make my throat tighten. Rose was there too, clapping louder than anyone else, her eyes bright with pride. She hugged me tightly. "I told you," she said. "The truth always catches up. Might as well let it run beside you instead of chasing you." Vivian wasn't there. Neither was Camille. And for the first time, their absence felt like a closed door instead of an open wound. A month later, Lucas and I stood in an empty space that smelled faintly of fresh paint and possibility. Sunlight spilled through the front windows, illuminating bare walls that would soon hold equipment, certificates, and years of careful work. "This is it," he said, "your practice." I nodded, heart steady. "Small, intentional, no shortcuts." He smiled. "You've never done anything halfway." The wedding followed soon after. Small, quiet, intentional. No long guest list. No obligation invites. Just the people who had stood still when things got uncomfortable. And stayed. Rose sat in the front row, hands folded, smiling like she already knew the ending. Charles stood beside her, composed, present. When I walked toward Lucas, I didn't feel nerves. I felt clarity. Our vows were simple, honest, unembellished. No promises to save each other, no declarations of perfection. Just choice, again and again. Afterward, as the evening settled into soft laughter and low music, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Congratulations. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen for a moment. "Vivian!" I didn't respond. Not out of anger, out of certainty. Happiness didn't require her approval. Later that night, Lucas and I sat on the balcony of our apartment, city lights blinking below us like distant stars. "Do you ever think about how different this could have been?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "If I'd stayed quiet, if you'd hesitated, if fear had won." "But it didn't," he replied. "No," I said, "it didn't." I thought about the version of myself who walked into Beaumont Manor pretending to be small. The woman who believed love had to be tested to be trusted. She wasn't weak. She was protecting herself the only way she knew how. Growth didn't mean erasing her. It meant thanking her and letting her rest. A week later, Megan sent me a photo. Noah sat on the living room floor at his grandparents' house, gripping a stuffed elephant I'd once bought him. His smile was wide, unguarded. "He's doing great," she wrote. "He keeps laughing at your voice messages." I saved the photo. Some chapters don't end the way we imagine. They end the way they're supposed to. That night, as Lucas wrapped an arm around me, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on other people behaving better. The solid kind. Built on truth. Chosen family. And the quiet confidence of no longer needing to prove my worth. I didn't shrink anymore. I didn't wait for permission. I simply lived, fully, honestly, and without apology. And that, I finally understood, was the real beginning. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. It became quieter. And that, I learned, was far more valuable. The weeks after the wedding settled into a rhythm that felt almost unfamiliar. Mornings started without anxiety. Evenings ended without replaying conversations in my head, wondering what I should have said differently or how I might have been judged. Lucas noticed the change before I did. "You sleep differently now?" he said one morning as sunlight spilled across the bed. "How so?" "Like you're not listening for something to break." He was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the moment when love turned conditional. My practice opened slowly. No grand announcement, no social media reveal, just a simple sign on the door and a quiet confidence that the right patients would find me. And they did. Dentists I'd worked with for years began sending cases my way, precision work, complex restorations, the kind that required trust more than speed. One afternoon, as I adjusted a crown under the microscope, I realized something that made me pause. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply doing my work. That realization stayed with me. Lucas stopped by the practice one evening, leaning in the doorway with that familiar half smile. "You look exactly where you're supposed to be." "I feel like it," I replied. We talked about ordinary things over dinner that night. Groceries, weekend plans, whether the living room needed another plant. Normal conversations, the kind that once felt impossible. Vivian never reached out again. Not after the message she sent on our wedding night. I thought about her occasionally, not with anger, but with distance. Some people mistake control for love so deeply that they can't recognize the difference anymore. That wasn't my responsibility to fix. Camille, on the other hand, tried once. A short email, polite, detached. I hope you and Lucas are well. No apology, no acknowledgement. I didn't respond. Silence can be an answer, too. Charles came by one afternoon unannounced, holding a box of old photographs. I thought you might want these, he said, setting them on the table. They were pictures of Lucas as a child, ordinary moments, messy hair, awkward smiles. I should have protected him better, Charles said quietly, from all of it. You did when it mattered, I replied. He nodded. That's what I'm trying to remember. After he left, Lucas flipped through the photos slowly. I don't think I ever imagined a life that felt this steady, he said. Neither did I admitted. That night, I dreamed of Noah. Not in a way that hurt, in a way that felt complete. I woke up to a message from Megan the next morning. He took his first steps today. I smiled, a mix of joy and something softer settling in my chest. I hadn't lost him. I'd loved him honestly, without ownership. That mattered. Later that week, I stood in my practice after closing, lights dimmed, city noise humming faintly outside. I caught my reflection in the glass, confident posture, relaxed expression, eyes clear. I thought about the woman who had walked into Beaumont Manor pretending to be small. She had believed that hiding her strength made her safer. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right anymore. Strength doesn't need disguise forever. At home, Lucas poured 2 glasses of wine and raised his slightly. To choosing our own rules, I clinked mine against his, and knowing when to stop playing other people's games. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't demand performance. As night settled in, I felt something settle with it. Not triumph, not victory, resolution. I didn't win against Vivian Beaumont. I simply stepped out of her reach. And in doing so, I gained something far more lasting than approval. I gained a life that didn't require me to pretend, a love that didn't need testing, and the quiet certainty that the hardest part of my story was already behind me. The last thing to change was the way I spoke about myself. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic realization, no single moment where everything clicked. It happened quietly, in pieces, the way healing usually does. One afternoon, a new patient sat across from me in my office, hands folded nervously in her lap. I'm sorry, she said, glancing around. I've heard you're very good. I smiled. I am. The words came out easily. No apology attached. No need to soften them. She relaxed instantly. After she left, I sat back in my chair, struck by how simple that exchange had been. How long had I believed confidence needed to be hidden to be acceptable? That evening, Lucas and I walked home from dinner, the city humming softly around us. You know what I admire most about you? He asked. I raised an eyebrow. Only one thing. He laughed. That you don't shrink anymore. Not even when you think no one's watching. I thought about that as we climbed the stairs to our apartment. He was right. I no longer rehearsed explanations in my head. I no longer prepared myself to be misunderstood. I no longer adjusted my presence to fit into someone else's comfort. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten, formal. From Vivian. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The letter was short, controlled, carefully worded. She congratulated us, said she hoped I was well, mentioned that families sometimes struggle with change. There was no apology. There didn't need to be. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not as a wound, but as a reminder. Some people don't change. They just lose access. Life moved forward. My practice grew steadily, not explosively, intentionally. I turned down cases that didn't align with how I wanted to work. I protected my time, my energy, my peace. Patients noticed. So did colleagues. One evening, Rose called me. I heard someone refer to you as the doctor who doesn't rush, she said with a chuckle. That's a reputation worth keeping. I think so too, I replied. Lucas and I talked about the future in grounded ways, not fantasy, not fear-based. What kind of life do we want? What kind of parents do we want to be someday? What kind of boundaries are non-negotiable? The answers were clear. Honesty, choice, mutual respect. One Sunday afternoon, Megan video called me. Noah filled the screen, unsteady on his feet, laughing at his own reflection. "He keeps saying your name," she said softly. Well, his version of it. My chest tightened, warm rather than aching. "I'm glad," I said. "So am I." After the call, Lucas wrapped an arm around me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, surprised by how true it was. "I really am." That night, lying in bed, I thought about how this story had begun. A woman walking into a mansion pretending to be small. Not because she lacked confidence, but because she had learned that visibility could be dangerous. I don't judge her for that. She survived the only way she knew how. But survival isn't the same as living. And living, I learned, doesn't come from proving people wrong. It comes from choosing yourself again and again, even when no one is watching. The world didn't suddenly become kinder. It became quieter, clearer, more honest. I stopped asking, "Am I enough?" I started asking, "Is this aligned with who I am?" And that changed everything. On the balcony one evening, city lights stretching endlessly below us, Lucas took my hand. "No tests," he said lightly. I smiled. "No masks." We stood there in silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because nothing needed to be defended. I had love that didn't require disguise, work that didn't require permission, a life that didn't require performance. And that was more than enough. It was mine.